Hey noobs, it's time to start your training. So when I first started to properly cycle, aka commuting to work, I was in my mid-20s and I was looking for a reason to basically save some money, and cycling was the perfect answer. I also found that I could live on my own schedule and not on the buses, and I was getting in some exercise as well. But getting comfortable on the roads was my first major obstacle. Now you see, the one thing that you don't want to do is get yourself in a dangerous situation because you're not comfortable in handling the situation that's around you. Key thing here is to start slow, work your way up, get comfortable, and you could even take a friend out with you to build your confidence. Could you potentially practice on a Sunday when things are quieter? Because that means if you know the route, then you have less to concentrate on when you're on busier roads. And remember, if you ever feel like you're in a situation where you're not comfortable or you can't handle it, whether that be maybe it's way too busy, there's too much traffic, or you're trying to turn across a busy road, you can always stop, get off and walk. When I first started to learn how to drive, my dad instilled in me to treat every other driver like they're an idiot. And he's right, because you cannot trust that other people are going to be driving by the highway code. And that particularly applies for cycling. You need to be sure that you're riding defensively, because if it's you versus a car, a lorry, a truck, you're not going to win. So you need to make sure that you're really clear in your actions and make sure you're positioned correctly on the road. That's a really crucial one. If you ride close to the pavement, then I'm afraid drivers will take liberties and try and squeeze past you. And this is so dangerous. Vehicles need to be passing cyclists by at least 1.5 meters if they're going up to 30 miles per hour, and any quicker, there needs to be more space. Make sure to take up a safe and confident position on the road and always give yourself an escape route. For example, if a car is creeping out of a side road when it is your right of way, or maybe a car is wanting to turn across the lane, which could cut you off, be ready to stop if they continue their maneuver. Always assume that they haven't seen you. This is where I find e-bikes to be amazing for confidence on the roads and add some extra safety, because it's got that electric assist that can help boost you out the way should you need to get out of harm's way. There are a load of free cycling courses here in the UK if you need to know how to position yourself safely on the road or get a little bit more au fait with road signs. So make sure to look up in your area, because there's probably something around. When I first started cycling, it was in the springtime when the weather was nice, and I managed to borrow my best friend's very old rally bike, which was far too small for me. It had sticky gears, it had a frayed seat, and I'm actually amazed that I managed to get by on it for so long. But then, when it got into the winter time, I realized that I really enjoyed this and I needed to upgrade. So I managed to bag myself a luxury £100 hybrid analog bike that was actually the right size for me and actually had working gears. Over the months, I'd gotten more confident, I was riding daily, and then I realized that actually I needed specific bits of kit. Now, before I go into details of specifically what these are, I just want to say, please don't feel pressured to spend loads of money all at once. If you want to, then of course you can, that's fine, but it takes time to accumulate these bits of kit, because obviously it costs money, and different terrains, different weathers means that you're going to need different things at different times. So just start with what you need and build up, because trust me, it took years before I had everything. So first up, don't let the rain dampen your drive to ride. Get yourself some good waterproofs, a jacket and trousers, or even a long poncho to drape over yourself and the bike. Now I'll be honest, if it is tipping it down with rain and I'm cycling to work, I might just not do it. I might just pick to get the tube instead. But if I'm cycling back home and it's a bit soggy, well, I don't really mind because I've got everything I need back at home. But dear Lord, please get yourself some mudguards, unless you want a wet track all the way up your arse and your pack. I do not care if you think it makes your bike look less cool, because I swear down, it's going to stop you from getting streaks, and it is going to stop other poor cyclists behind you from getting water thrown up into their faces. Yes, this happens to me way too often. Riding in cold weather is actually one of my favorites. It gives me a peppy start to the day, gets me moving and my brain working, which is something the sweaty, overcrowded tube never could. Here in England, it is rarely too cold to cycle, so my best advice is to get good with your layers. A warm base layer keeps your core warm, plus a lighter jacket or windbreaker means you may start a little cold, but you'll be a good temperature once you're riding. Double up on gloves for the really cold days, and balaclavas can be your best friend to keep your neck and ears warm. And make sure you're staying seen. When the light is low, you're going to want bright reflectives, good lights, and you can even go on up and get yourself a fancy light up helmet. So I use the Lumos helmet, which doesn't come cheap, but the visibility it gives me is priceless. But one thing I will say is to be careful of the bike lights that are too powerful. It may sound like a good idea, but actually they can blind and disorient other road users, which is scary for them and ironically could put you in a dangerous situation. So test your lights on yourself, and if you can still see around, then you're golden. Now I actually go into way more detail about commuting commuting in the winter time in this video right here. So make sure to check that out once you finish this video. The only time I've ever been in an accident on my bike is because of another road user who's coming up behind me making a poor decision. And that is because I didn't have any apparatus to keep an eye on people behind me at all times. So whether or not you want to be buying something like hindsight glasses, which I use every single day, these have mirrors in the side of the lenses so you can see behind you consistently, or you can spend about a tenner. There's a nice cheap option, getting yourself a rear view mirror. It means that you can constantly see what's behind you, keep an eye on other people on the road. Now obviously it's their responsibility because they're behind you, but it really does help just keeping track of everything, because cars and motorbikes have mirrors on them, so why don't bikes? Now, one of the most important pieces of equipment is having a good lock. A general rule of thumb is to spend about 10% of the value of your bike on a lock. So the more expensive it's going to be, obviously the more appealing it's going to be to thieves, so you want to have the best deterrent possible. So I use a lock called the Squire Chain Lock 10. It's diamond approved, it's really sturdy, it's got this lovely material covering so it doesn't scratch your bike, and I really like this feature, you can lock it around your waist for easy carrying. So that's everything in terms of gear that you're going to want to need at some point in time. But if there's anything else that I've missed, then make sure to drop a comment down below. A big hurdle for beginner riders is working out how the hell you're going to stay fresh after you're commuting, because let's be real, nobody wants those stanky pits at work. If your work doesn't have showers, then you've got a few options available. Maybe you can see if there's a local gym in the area, or failing that, could you potentially wear less layers? So I actually get really hot when I cycle, so I try to go minimal on the layering. It's usually a top and a thin cycling jacket. A backpack can also make your back particularly sweaty. Now I don't care what the brands are saying, how much air ventilation it claims it has, you're gonna get sweaty. So maybe consider getting some panniers or even using your front basket. Also, potentially an unpopular opinion is slow down. Don't completely exert yourself the whole time you're cycling. Commuting in doesn't have to be full-on exercise if you don't need it to be. Maybe you can leave a little bit earlier, go a little bit slower, and it means you're gonna be less sweaty and you might just enjoy your ride a little bit more. Failing all of that, it's gonna have to be a sink shower, isn't it? Get that sink, get those flannels, and get all that deodorant and layer up. Thankfully, I've never gotten into that position before, but for a lot of people, that is the case. Now, try and minimize your layers, try and go a bit slower if you want. It can really help. One of the most important tips of them all that definitely gets overlooked is keeping that bike of yours in good nick. Now, I am so guilty of this years down the line, but say if you've got a bike with a chain, make sure you keep it cleaned, make sure it's lubed, so that it can stay in good condition and you haven't got some janky old bike that's gonna break at any moment. Keep those tires pumped up too, and remember that there's loads of great information and advice out there on YouTube, so go search up some videos on how to maintain your bike. But if you don't want to do any of that, that's fine. Go and see a professional. Go to your local bike shop where you can pay a small fee to get it serviced. And remember, enjoy yourself. Don't take it too seriously. Make sure that every journey is one that you can enjoy, because another bike on the road is always a big tick from us. So that's training complete. Now over to you.